The station was too loud for a Tuesday morning. Metal wheels screamed against the tracks, voices tangled in echoes, and the smell of coffee clung to the air. Yet amid the noise, she stood still, almost invisible, her gaze fixed on the departing train as if watching her past roll away in slow motion. Her fingers tightened around a small, cracked watch, its glass webbed with fine lines, its second hand frozen between moments. It wasn't ticking anymore. Hasn't been for months. But she kept it close, as if the silence of it still told her something the world wouldn't. The wind slipped through the platform, catching the loose strands of her dark hair, brushing them across her face. She didn't move them away. The sting of the cold reminded her she was still here, still breathing, even if it felt like she'd left herself behind somewhere she couldn't return to. A man brushed past, murmuring an apology. She didn't answer. Her eyes followed him for a second, the way he adjusted his collar, the way he avoided looking back, and for a brief heartbeat, she thought she recognized him. But no, wrong shoulders, wrong silence. Her reflection trembled faintly in the train's window before it pulled away. She looked smaller there, like someone else entirely. Maybe she was. Maybe that's what time does. It reshapes you until even mirrors get confused. The loudspeaker crackled. Train 47 departing for her. She didn't hear the rest. Her pulse drowned everything out. Her hand moved to her pocket, brushing against the soft fabric of a red scarf. She pulled it out slowly, letting it hang from her hand. The color burned against the dull grays of the platform, a single mark of defiance in a world that had taken too much. She remembered who gave it to her. The memory came like a cut, quick, clean, final. The scarf had once smelled like warmth, like laughter. Now it just smelled like dust and endings. Someone behind her whispered, "Are you leaving or waiting?" She turned slightly, eyes unreadable. "Neither," she said quietly. Her voice didn't tremble. It had already broken long ago. The question lingered in the air as the train disappeared into the horizon, its echo thinning into the wind. She watched until the last sound faded, then looked down at the cracked watch again. The frozen second hand pointed to the moment she stopped believing in forgiveness. A breath left her lips, not quite a sigh, not yet a promise. The scarf fluttered once in her grip, then stilled. She turned toward the exit, steps slow but certain. Somewhere beyond that door waited the person who taught her what loss truly meant. And this time, she wasn't coming to beg for closure. She was coming to return it. The moment she stepped out of the station, the world seemed quieter, almost too quiet. The chaos of the platform dissolved behind her, replaced by the soft hum of passing cars and the hollow rustle of leaves along the pavement. She walked slowly, the small cracked watch tucked back in her coat pocket, its weight familiar against her side. Every few steps, she found herself touching the red scarf again, letting the fabric slide between her fingers. It was more than cloth now. It was memory. It was promise. Her father had given it to her when she was 13, after one of those cold winters when the power went out for days and the house had felt more like a secret than a home. "Red keeps you warm," he'd said with a grin, wrapping it around her neck like armor, even when no one else will. Back then, she believed warmth was something people gave you. Now, she knew better. It was something you had to steal back when the world forgot your name. She passed a cafe window, glancing inside at a family gathered around a small table. 3 cups of coffee, laughter spilling across the glass. The father's hand reached to brush crumbs from his daughter's chin, and something inside her twisted. She pressed her palm against the cracked watch in her pocket, feeling its frozen second hand like a pulse that had stopped mid-beat. She had tried once, tried to build something steady after he left. She worked double shifts at the store, skipped dinners, saved every coin she could. But the bills still came, heavy and endless. And when help finally arrived, it wore a smile that cost too much. The man who offered her a way out had taken something else instead. Now, she was walking toward the same city that took everything from her, except the anger she'd nursed in silence. Behind her, the stranger from the platform followed at a distance. He wasn't hiding, not really, but his steps were careful, unhurried. Once, when she stopped to adjust her scarf, She caught his reflection in a car window. Their eyes met for half a second, his calm, hers unreadable, and then both looked away. Maybe he was just another traveler heading in the same direction. Maybe not. She reached the edge of the parking lot, where the last traces of sunlight melted into the glass of the station doors. A child ran past, laughing, his mother calling after him. The sound felt distant, unreal. Her bus arrived with a hiss of brakes, doors yawning open. She hesitated before stepping in, the scarf brushing her wrist like a whisper. From behind, a voice called out softly, almost lost in the noise. "Miss, you dropped something." She turned. The stranger was holding the cracked watch in his hand. And for a moment, she couldn't remember if she had lost it, or if he had just found what he came for. Rain began as a whisper, soft, uncertain drops darkening the concrete around her boots. The stranger held the cracked watch between them, his fingers pale against the dull silver. For a moment, neither spoke. The world narrowed to the rhythm of the rain, the faint hum of the idling bus, and the watch glinting in his hand like a question she didn't want to answer. She took a slow breath. "Where did you find that?" He shrugged lightly, his voice quiet. "You dropped it by the benches. Thought you might want it back." His tone was even, but something in his eyes unsettled her. Not menace, something heavier like recognition. She reached out and took the watch carefully, her fingertips brushing his. A jolt, small but undeniable, ran through her. His hands were rough, cold, hands that had worked hard, or maybe fought harder. "Thanks," she murmured, slipping it back into her pocket. He nodded and stepped aside, letting her pass toward the bus. But she didn't move. The rain was falling harder now, turning his hair darker, plastering it to his forehead. His coat was worn, frayed at the cuffs, and when he adjusted it, a torn corner of a photograph peeked out from his wallet, just enough for her to see a young girl, maybe 8 or 9, smiling against a sunlit field. Her chest tightened. The resemblance was faint, but real. She knew that kind of smile, the kind taken before the world broke something that couldn't be fixed. "Your daughter?" she asked, surprising herself. He hesitated, then gave a quiet laugh that didn't sound like one. "Was," he said, "a long time ago." The rain thickened into a curtain, blurring everything beyond the bus stop. Thunder rolled low in the distance. She looked down, tracing her thumb over the cracked glass of the watch. Loss recognizes loss. For the first time, she saw herself not as the victim or the avenger, but as someone standing at the edge of another person's ruin. The symmetry of it scared her. He studied her, eyes gentle but unreadable. "You're not really leaving, are you?" She didn't answer. The bus driver leaned out the door. "You getting on or not, miss?" She looked from a man to the open door, the scarf damp and heavy in her hand. Her heartbeat faltered between choices. She had come here certain of what she wanted: revenge, closure, something sharp enough to stop the ache. But now, staring at this stranger who carried ghosts just like hers, certainty felt like a lie. He took a step closer, rain dripping from his collar. "Sometimes," he said softly, "the person you're chasing isn't who you think they are." The thunder cracked louder, swallowing his words. She turned toward the bus, but her reflection in the window looked back like it didn't believe her next move. The doors hissed shut behind her, and outside he didn't leave. He just watched, like he was waiting for her to remember why she came. The bus moved through the rain-soaked city, each turn dragging her further from certainty. Drops streaked across the window, blurring streetlights into trembling halos. She pressed her forehead against the glass, watching strangers hurry under umbrellas, all of them moving towards something that wasn't her. Her fingers found the cracked watch again. She turned it over in her hand, tracing the break lines across its surface. It had once been her father's, his favorite thing, the one he always said kept time honest. When he died, she wore it every day until the glass cracked in an accident she never told anyone about. After that, it stopped ticking, like it had chosen to remember one specific second and refuse the rest. The bus hit a red light, and in the reflection, she saw him, standing outside, soaked through, the same calmness on his face. The scarf around her neck tightened, her breath catching in her throat. She almost told herself it was impossible, just another trick of guilt or grief. But when the bus rolled forward, he was still there, walking along the sidewalk, keeping pace. "Miss," the driver's voice broke through, kind but wary. "You okay back there?" She nodded quickly, though her hands trembled in her lap. "Yet just tired." The driver glanced at her in the rearview mirror, eyes soft with something close to pity. Then he looked away, pretending not to see. Some people carry more than just bags, she thought. They carry silence. At the next stop, she rose abruptly. The driver frowned. "This isn't downtown yet." "I know." Her voice was thin, barely hers. The door opened with a hiss, and the cold rushed in, slicing through the warmth. She stepped out into the rain, the city swallowing her whole. Across the street, the stranger stood under the awning of a closed bookstore, his shoulders drawn, eyes shadowed beneath dripping hair. "You shouldn't have followed me," she said, her voice steadier than she felt. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he reached into his coat and pulled something out. The watch. Her heart stuttered. She had it, hadn't she? She looked down, but her pocket was empty. He held it gently, like one holds something that still hurts to touch. "Maybe it belongs to both of us now," he said quietly. "One of us broke it. The other kept it." The rain softened, becoming almost a hush. Cars passed. A woman nearby whispered to her child, pulling him closer, their gaze flicking between the two like they'd stumbled upon something fragile and dangerous. She took one trembling step toward him, her reflection ghosted in the puddles between them. Her voice cracked as she whispered, "Why do I feel like I've known you before?" He smiled, faint and tired. "Maybe you've been chasing me longer than you think." The thunder rolled again, low and endless, and she didn't know if she wanted to run or stay just long enough to hear what came next. The rain had thinned into mist by the time they reached the corner cafe, its yellow light bleeding softly into the wet street. She hadn't meant to follow him, but somehow her feet decided before her mind did. Inside, the air smelled of burnt espresso and rain-damp coats. He motioned to a booth in the corner, and she sat, her scarf clinging to her shoulders like a secret refusing to fall away. For a moment, neither spoke. The cracked watch lay on the table between them, catching the dim light like an unspoken truth. "I thought it stopped working years ago," she said finally. "It did," he murmured, "but some things don't need to move to keep time." The line hit her hard. It was something her father used to say when fixing broken clocks in their old kitchen. Her pulse quickened. "You've said that before." He looked up slowly, studying her expression. "Maybe you've heard it from someone who once knew me." The room seemed to tilt, her breath catching as he reached into his wallet. From inside, he pulled the photograph she'd glimpsed earlier, the little girl in the sunlit field. But now, beneath the light, she saw what she had missed, the red scarf around the child's neck. The same one, now resting against her skin. Her voice broke. "That's mine." He shook his head gently. "It was hers. My daughter. I gave it to her before the accident." His words faltered, heavy with something unhealed. "She was wearing it when your father tried to pull her from the wreck. He didn't make it, but she didn't either." The world went soundless. The rain outside, the faint chatter of the cafe, the clink of cups, all disappeared. The scarf slid from her shoulders onto the table, a slow collapse of red fabric between them. She stared at it, trembling. Every heartbeat felt like glass cracking. "He saved her," she whispered, barely audible. "He tried," the man said, and when they pulled him out, that watch was in his hand. "I kept it because it was the last thing still working that day." Her eyes burned. The cracked glass, the frozen second hand, it all made sense now. The moment her father's watch stopped wasn't random. It had marked the second everything changed for both of them. The cafe door opened, wind sweeping in with a wet chill. She stood abruptly, unsteady but resolute. "You said some things don't need to move to keep time," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Maybe revenge is one of them." He looked up at her, eyes full of something between apology and recognition. She turned toward the door. Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the streets glistening like mirrors. Across the road stood a tall building, the glass office of the company she had applied to earlier that week. A name glowed on the sign above it. His name. Her hand tightened around the scarf, and then she walked toward the building, into the decision that would end one life and begin another. The lobby lights of the building glowed sterile and perfect, reflecting off the marble floor like trapped stars. She hesitated just beyond the glass doors, the red scarf wound tightly around her hand. The night was still wet from the rain, and the streetlights painted everything gold and ghostly. She could see him inside, his posture calm, composed, as if he had been expecting her all along. For a long moment, she only watched him. The same man who had followed her, found her, and held pieces of her life she hadn't known were missing. The same man who had unknowingly shattered everything years ago. When she finally stepped inside, her footsteps echoed like a pulse returning to life. He looked up from behind the reception desk. No words at first, just two lives folding into the same quiet. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. "I wasn't sure I wouldn't," she replied softly. The elevator chimed behind them, but neither moved. The air smelled faintly of paper and cold coffee, the kind that lingers after long nights and longer regrets. "I saw your name on the door," she continued. "All this time, I thought I was running towards something, but maybe I was just circling back." He nodded slowly. "That's what grief does. It teaches us to walk in circles until we think we've found purpose." She reached into her coat and placed the cracked watch on the counter between them. "It's yours. It always was." He stared at it, the same way one looks at a wound that finally stops bleeding. "I kept it because I couldn't let go of what it cost me," he said. "But maybe it was never mine to hold." The silence between them thickened. She felt her throat tighten, the weight of years pressing behind her ribs. "You could have told me sooner," she whispered. "You could have said something about him, about her." "I tried," he said. "But when I saw you at the station, you looked like her. My daughter." For a second, I didn't know who I was looking at. Her heart stumbled. "So that's why you followed me." He didn't answer immediately. "Then, because you reminded me that I failed both of you." The truth hit like a quiet collapse. Not vengeance, not love, just two ghosts meeting in the aftermath. She lifted the scarf from around her neck, the same red one that had belonged to his daughter, and placed it gently beside the watch. "Then maybe this belongs with her again," she said. He looked at the two objects, the cracked timepiece and the faded red cloth, and something inside him seemed to soften or break. "You don't have to forgive me." "I'm not here to forgive," she replied. "I'm here to stop carrying what isn't mine." Outside, the wind stirred. The world felt lighter, even in its sorrow. She turned and walked back toward the glass doors. He didn't stop her this time. As she stepped into the cold night, the city lights reflected faintly in her eyes, the same way they once had in his daughter's photograph. The station wasn't far. Trains were still running. Somewhere, another departure waited, another beginning disguised as an ending. And as the wind tugged at her hair, she thought, not every stranger you help is meant to stay, but some leave you changed forever. The morning light arrived quietly, spilling gold across the cracked sidewalks and damp rooftops. The city was waking, slow and half-dreaming, as she walked down the narrow street with her hands tucked deep into her coat pockets. There was no rush now, no storm chasing her, no vengeance humming beneath her skin. Only stillness, the kind that comes after you finally stopped running. She passed the cafe where they had sat the night before. The same booth was empty now, 2 coffee cups left to dry in the soft light. For a fleeting moment, she imagined him there again, head bowed, fingers tracing the cracked watch, but the image dissolved like breath on glass. Her footsteps carried her to the station, the same platform, the same hum of life moving in every direction. But it felt different this time. The world hadn't changed, she had. She sat on a bench, the one near the old vending machine, and opened her small bag. Inside lay the scarf, folded neatly, its red now darker with age and rain. She ran her fingers over it once more, feeling the ghost of warmth it used to hold. Then she placed it gently in a locker nearby, along with the cracked watch. 2 stories that had finally found rest together. Sometimes love is not romance, she whispered to herself. It's recognition. The words sounded almost foreign, yet true in a way that hurts softly. She thought of her father's smile, the way his hands used to smell of oil and metal when fixing clocks, how he believed time could always be repaired. Maybe he was right. Maybe time didn't heal. It simply made room for what comes after. A mother and daughter hurried past, laughing, their voices bright against the cold air. The little girl's scarf fluttered behind her, a different red, but still the same kind of hope. She stood, her heart lighter than it had been in years. The train's distant whistle called out, familiar and strange all at once. She didn't board this time. She just stood there, letting the sound wash through her until it no longer hurt. For the first time, she didn't need to arrive anywhere or leave anything behind. She simply existed, in the pause between what was lost and what could still be found. The morning wind brushed against her face, lifting her hair like a quiet benediction. She closed her eyes, breathing it in, and smiled. Because some stories don't end where forgiveness begins, they end where understanding does. And somewhere deep within the silence, the world seemed to whisper back, "We only find peace when we stop trying to own the pain that was never meant to stay."